This is Small Business Conversations with Akona Machoba, unlocking essential advice, opinions, and key issues that affect South Africa's small business community.
Welcome to yet another edition of the Small Business Conversations podcast, Moneyweb's weekly SME show highlighting critical issues affecting South Africa's small business environment. As you might know, July is Savings Month, and for this week's episode, we are sticking to just that theme. Moneyweb has collated a fantastic string of content aimed at helping people manage their finances, and this is quite important in the current environment we are all trying to navigate in varying degrees. However, what has stood out for me is that a lot of the savings content is focused on the individual and not so much the business. So how can SMEs go about saving a few bucks? To help shed some light on this, we have joining us on the show today Arnold February, the Regional Investment Manager at Business Partners Limited. Welcome to the show, Arnold, and thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Akuna, and thank you, and good morning to your listeners as well.
So, Arnold, as I've mentioned, most of the time we speak about creating a savings culture. The information is directed at individuals in respect of their personal finances. We don't necessarily hear much of this being directed at small businesses. And I'm just wondering, how important is it for SMEs to practice saving?
It's very important. So whether it's an individual or a business, I think it's a good habit. In fact, in business, it's called good practice. So it's a very good practice to have in a business, but also to have money in a business can save you in many ways. When times are tough, you have a buffer that you can use. When there's emergency spending, you have cash that you can use. When your business goes through seasonality, for example, you have cash that you can use. And also, if your business is expanding, then it's very important that you are able to buy assets with cash, or at least place a good deposit, because it reduces the cost of borrowing debt from institutions. There's several important reasons why a business should have positive cash flow management, but it all comes down to the entrepreneur. So there is an overlap between the individual and as a business owner and the business itself.
And in your assessments of the culture of saving, is it a common practice for small businesses, especially those on the smaller end of the SME spectrum? Are they practicing saving?
What we found, and it was very interesting, post-COVID, the culture of saving has become a more common culture, which wasn't necessarily the case before. And cash is king, and if you ask any entrepreneur now, how important is cash flow in your business right now, they would probably rank it up there in the top 2 or 3. So we definitely see that there has been a move towards savings. I think coming through difficult times and understanding how important it is to have cash, or how difficult it is not to have cash when you need it, has really taught our entrepreneurs some valuable lessons.
And just wondering the types of saving practices that small businesses can adopt. Can you please walk us through the different methods that have been recommended that SMEs can implement in their operations?
Yes. So from a business perspective, there are 3 categories of cash flow. It's cash flow from operating activities, from investment activities, and from financing activities. Now, broadly speaking, the operating activities is the biggest one because it's the day-to-day things from a business perspective. So a couple of things that an entrepreneur should look out for is the cash flow cycle within the business. And that involves having good suppliers that give you good terms of payment, that you have good customers, that you build your business around quality and not necessarily price. So customers are willing to pay a bit extra for your product. And I think also from a business perspective, you must have policies that you implement to manage your cash. So consider having a discount giving policy or asset replacement policy. How do you spend your money policy from an operating expenses perspective, and also a savings policy, saving towards a rainy day, saving towards expansion. And once you have a policy, you need to keep your eye on it and stick to that policy. Another one that we see is that if you spend money on improving your operations and your efficiency of your operations, then you actually get more done with less effort. And so it's worthwhile spending some money on those type of systems that will enhance your accounting systems, your operating systems, how you manage your customers. And, once you automate things that are very much routine or mundane, it frees up your time to do more business and to be more successful as an entrepreneur.
I think that's quite an interesting observation that you give there and advice as well on a method of saving. I mean, the automation conversation is quite contentious. I mean, whichever way you look at it, in any period that it's existed, automation, tech, AI has been seen as a threat to employees' security in the workplace, and it's been quite a contentious labor issue. And I'm just wondering, how do SMEs navigate a transition to kind of replacing those mundane operations or those mundane functions with maybe automated practices? How do we navigate that transition in order to balance the labor aspect, but also efficiency and saving?
Yeah, it's an important one, and I think many entrepreneurs listening now are juggling with this conundrum, I suppose. But I think if I put it plainly, if you place a cost to your time and you use the same philosophy for your business, but if you place a cost to your time, you're going to ask yourself, if I'm doing a specific task, is this the best way that I'm spending my time, that I'm incurring the cost from a business perspective? And if you apply that same logic to your business, you could ask yourself, whether the processes that you currently have is giving the best results for the business, whether the systems and the teams that you currently have is giving the best results for the business. Optimization is definitely not the go-to for everything. But if you take optimization of the most routine or mundane things, that really would save your time and your staff's time. And the second thing is also, if you identify staff with talent, you should actually maximize on that. So you should have a staff training, talent management process to maximize or get the best out of your employees, where they can grow, they take on more work, they can earn more, and they feel more part of the business. So I think it's a combination of automating mundane or routine things like payments and customer engagement, but also maximizing your staff complement, looking at infrastructure, looking at efficiencies in your vehicles you use and the assets that you use. So I think it's a collective, but it definitely remains a juggling act.
Just out of interest, briefly, is there any way that business owners that maybe they're listening now to our conversation can identify what a mundane task is in their operations? How do they identify that, okay, this can be automated and this person maybe that works here could either be let off or put to better use in another skills-intensive part of the business? How do they differentiate between a mundane task and something that's quite necessary?
So I think if as a business owner, there should be some introspection in where are the bottlenecks in the system. If it's a matter of getting invoices out, for example, to a client, if that's taking too long to get out, then there's an issue in the routine of the system. And that there's an automation objective or opportunity there that can improve the system and consequently the cash flow. Other routine things like payments, if payments are made regularly to suppliers or to service providers, that can be automated. If an entrepreneur who's the head of the business is doing certain tasks that can really be delegated to staff members or to other management, then or even automated, then that should be considered. So there is a cost-benefit analysis for all of these decisions. Identifying what is routine, I would say focus on what's the bottlenecks, where can things be improved, and if it can be done with very little cost, then I would say implement it in your business.
And Arnold, I'm interested. I mean, I've mentioned the great focus on personal finance, on savings, on the savings topic. And I'm just interested in if there's a specific formula that SMEs can use to guide them on how much they should be saving. I mean, on a personal finance level, we are always told that we need to save at least 10% or 20% of our income for rainy days. Is that the same for SMEs? Is there a particular percentage that they should be putting away for rainy days?
It's very similar. It's a very similar concept, but it works something like this. What is the total monthly fixed cost or cash required just to run the business? So that would be paying installments, paying staff, covering utility costs and having some stock. And then have a multiplier of, let's say, between 3 and sometimes 8 months on that. Because some businesses, the cash flow is very quick. So the job is done fairly quickly. There's not a lot of lead time in waiting for raw material and to get the job done. And then they can invoice quick. And some customers pay 15 days, some customers pay 45 days, 60 days. So at the end of the day, the argument should be what is the need of the business on a cash flow basis? And then how many months do I need in my specific business to ensure that I stay positive, cash flow positive for a certain period of time?
And just out of interest as well, what can be said about partnering with other businesses to save on costs? I'm thinking, for example, the energy issue and investing in backup energy costs to lower your costs. That's a hot topic right now with load shedding. How would you recommend SMEs look into forming alliances with other businesses to ensure that they are saving, working in a group instead of working individually?
So I know there's pros and cons to it, but I would recommend always be open to the suggestion. You don't have to own an asset to get the benefit of it. The example that you used with energy, if you're in a building complex and your neighbor has an energy solution that provides them with sufficient energy and a bit more, then see how you could perhaps pay your neighbor for using their energy resources. But that's one example. Other examples would be if you in a business and you need to buy raw materials or stock, perhaps consider looking at other businesses in the same industry and doing bulk purchases and sharing the discount amongst one another. So there are opportunities like that out there, but you have to go in with a clear head and open eyes and make sure that if you're partnering with another business owner or another institution that it's somebody you can trust and that you don't bound yourself legally in a situation where you will be worse off, if that makes sense.
I think that last point there about the legalities of it is quite interesting. I was actually going to follow up with that, the dynamics of the agreement with the partners that you choose to partner up with. Should it be something that should be on a short-term basis that can be reviewed regularly, or what would your advice be on how to enter into those agreements with like-minded businesses that share probably the same interests or same interest to save as you are recommending?
So what we find is it's an agreement between one or two or more parties, but it's usually it's a long-term relationship, but the agreement is renewed annually. So you're almost not tied in for, let's say, 5 or 10 years, but you can have a legal agreement where the parties agreed to a period of 12 months or less and renewed on a regular basis, especially if you consider things like energy or whether it is a utilization of, accounting systems, or I'm trying to think of examples off the tip of my head. But whatever the due benefit of what is the resource that is being used for, the input costs often change. I mean, if we look at energy, the cost of electricity has increased substantially. The cost of inverters and batteries are decreasing substantially because of the demand. So you also don't want to tie yourself in for a 5-year period with these variables changing all the time. So I would strongly advise a short-term period agreement that you can re-look at continuously, perhaps on an annual basis or so.
And just a comment on the types of saving vehicles that businesses could use to ensure that the money that they put away does grow with their business. What are your recommendations with that?
So there's various institutions that offers opportunities for you to save, and then you get good interest rates on it. But you'll find that if you want a high return with respect to interest on your savings, you're going to have to lock your money in for a period of time. So I would actually flip the question around and say it depends on what you're saving for. So if you're saving money for retirement, then definitely go and lock your money in over long term. If you're saving to expand your business and you need a deposit, for example, and you're going to borrow the rest from an institution, then in that specific case, you don't want to lock your money in over a long period of time. So the real question, actually, as an entrepreneur thinking about saving vehicles, would be what is the core objective of the saving, and how fast would you need the money or must have access to that money? Because in certain cases, it might be better not to put your cash, your savings in an institution where your money is locked on a 30-day call account or a year call account or even longer. So it's about what the need for the savings is, what the objective is, and how quick do you need to access that cash flow.
And that right there is Arnold February of Business Partners Limited, sharing his insights on the importance of savings for SMEs as we near the end of Savings Month. Thank you for your time, Arnold. Really appreciate your insights.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and follow Small Business Conversations, and don't forget to share our episodes. If you want to contribute to the conversation, you can tweet me at machoba_a, or you can email us at smepodcast@moneyweb.co.za to share your thoughts and suggestions for future conversations. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.
You've been listening to Small Business Conversations with Akona Machoba. To listen to more Moneyweb podcasts, go to moneyweb.co.za, the Moneyweb app, or your favorite podcast platforms. Moneyweb, your trusted source for business and investment insights.